All right, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, CV Tech One. This is not your live podcast, so we figured we'd do something different because we wanted to talk about Antonio Brown. Uh, Actually, I believe Antonio Brown's been in the news for the last 4 years, on and off the field. And the last 2 weeks, he's been all over the place. So, for those that don't know, Antonio Brown left the game in the I believe third quarter, walked out, took off his gear, threw it at the bench, left his team to fight by themselves. And a week later, he's starting to go around doing interviews and podcasts. And Gio and I are going to talk about the recent podcast that just happened with I Am Athlete yesterday, I believe. And we're just going to kind of give our opinion, what happened, and what's going on, and also critique the actual interview with Brandon Marshall, and maybe questions that should have been asked, um, or did he ask good questions, or maybe it was just Antonio Brown, the person itself, is the reason why a lot of questions wasn't asked. And yeah, let's get to it. So the interview was, I believe, yesterday, and I'll play in the background on and off, and I won't have the voice because we don't want to get flagged or anything. But Gio, what did you think about Antonio Brown? And then we could talk about the actual interview and maybe what questions could have been asked. But what do you think about Antonio Brown, especially the last 2 weeks and his actions off the field?
Um, First of all, I think this is the first thing that I want to say is I think this day and age, it's a great we're in a great position as fans, audience members to get like the real scoop from the stars and the entertainers and the famous people that we watch and we follow, right? Because they're able to go on these podcasts and kind of like you get to see them unfiltered, right? So that's the first thing I want to say. So that's what's great about this stuff. They can go on podcasts now and talk about these things. And so with that in mind, I get to see Antonio Brown in an environment that is not a press conference, that he's chilling and he's out there. They're just hanging out, right? So my impressions were, I don't think he's, you know, suffering from CTE. I'm not a doctor, right? But like that's the first thing everybody jumped in. Oh, he's crazy, right? He's doing these crazy
Yeah.
things. Something's got to be wrong with him. Someone in his corner needs to like reel him in. Um, I think he has a firm grasp of who he is. I think he does what he wants. He has fu money, as we want to say. Um, so when you have fu money, like we had talked plenty of times before, is like you know money doesn't change who you are. I don't believe that, and people have said that, right? If you're if you're a mean person, if you're an asshole, money just makes you more of a mean person, more of an asshole, potentially, right?
Yeah.
Um, and Antonio Brown, you know what I'm saying? Like having money, and I don't want to speak on his behalf. I don't know him other than this interview, really, right? So I can only go off of this interview. Is he seems of sound mind, that he knows who he is, what he stands for, and he stands behind his decisions. That's my answer to that question. What did you think on that? And then we'll move on
Do
from there.
do you think it's more fu money that's making him behave this way, or is it some sort of mental thing? Because if it's CTE, we can't tell until the player is actually passed, right?
Right,
That's the only way. So, do
right.
you think it's actually fu money though that's making him behave this way?
He has fu money.
Um,
Yes. So, but
hmm.
is that what's making him act that way? Um, to a degree, yes, right? Because let's look at Antonio Brown first couple years in the NFL. Nothing, right? Like he was drafted sixth round, something like that, late.
Hmm.
No one special. No one was talking about Antonio Brown when he was drafted, right? So he got drafted by Pittsburgh late in the draft, and he was relatively quiet, right? And then the second year made some noise, third year made more noise. when he got his first contract, like everybody knew who AB was. And now at this point, maybe he knew he was great, right? And he was always Antonio Brown, but he had to keep it low key because he's got to make his money. He's got to get his reps in, he's got to get his accolades, and he's got to get his rep, right? And I think once he got that and he became the man, so and in this case, he got money and fame and fortune, right? All that stuff together that made what he already was. And again, I don't know him, right? So I could just go off of what I
Yeah.
see. I try to give what I see from him and not from what I see in the media and what people. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm going off of purely what I see him do and what I see him say and what I see him tweet. So that's when you see the antics, right? When he made the money, right? So so to answer your question, yeah, like I think the money made him. It got to his head, which he was probably already big headed. Because remember, these stars, they're relatively stars in high school, college, and even though he wasn't like top tier, it probably got to his head to some degree. So when he became the NFL, probably even worse, he wasn't the man, and then when he got to the NFL, became the man. He's like, ain't nobody telling me what to do ever. I'm gonna do me all the time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the money side of things did catapult him to some sort of arrogance to like, to his style, because he would be the first one to tell you, I came from this place, now I'm in the NFL. When you hear other players talk about him, he's a hard worker. The guy practices like crazy, right? He's got the numbers now to back that up. The hard work, the skill is there. So now you throw money in it, it's like, man, I came out of nothing. I work for this. Who's this person telling me no? Man, I can just go get my own over here. You know what I mean? I
Right.
came, if you tell me no, this money could make somebody else says yes. So
Yeah.
I do think the money did catapult him to kind of be this person. Like you said, if you're an ass, money just kind of,
Yeah.
give you that little boost to be even bigger than what you really are. But I don't know. I watched this interview, man. I don't think the guy is crazy at all. Um, even though I think you said it was hard for you to understand what he was trying to say, because even for me, like if I have a conversation with somebody, I can have a conversation, but like when I'm like even potting, sometimes I stumble on words, like it makes it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't know, just because I guess because it's being recorded, that kind of thing. I don't know if that happens to him at all. I don't know that. But listening to him, some things made sense to me. Even though you said, it was tough to kind of
So yeah,
understand,
yeah.
and I
So
get it.
can I explain so that way people watching
Oh yeah, yeah. I was
can
gonna
tell
get
me,
to
right?
it. Yeah, yeah.
So what one of my impressions were he seemed kind of scatterbrained. I'll say scatterbrained, but like his responses to questions weren't making sense, right? They were asking him questions and he was responding in a way that didn't answer the question, right?
Yeah.
So if they're just chilling and they're just talking, it's almost like he's got an idea in his head that he wants to get off, and they're asking him one question and he's answering totally different. As an example, like if
Yeah.
they're like, "Hey, Antonio, what's 1+1?" and he's just like, "Yellow birds and strawberries," right? And I'm just like, that wasn't. I'm waiting for an answer to that question, and he's not answering it, right? So, and as we talked before, we were talking about how there are other interviewers that do a really great job. They ask a question, they let you answer it, and then they'll come back and hit with the question that, like me as the audience member watching, wants to hear. Like
Right.
Joe Rogan, as we said before, is like, oh, Joe Rogan's great at that. In this case, I think they missed the mark a little bit. This Antonio Brown and the guys around him. This is an opportunity, a great opportunity. Just think about it. How many people want to interview Antonio Brown? They get an opportunity to interview Antonio Brown, and I feel as they missed the mark, they missed a lot of very important questions that they could have asked him to help him clarify what his actions were. So
Yeah.
they one failed to ask him those questions or allow him to speak openly enough and feel comfortable enough to get open what he was trying to say. So when they were asking him questions, he almost at some point, so he opened up kind of scatterbrained. and then seemed to get somewhat defensive, specifically at Brandon Marshall. I felt
Yeah.
a lot of tension between the two of them when he was talking. You could just pick it up on the body language, how he was like tapping Swaggy P and felt more comfortable with Swaggy P. But like he felt like a couple examples. He called Brandon Marshall like I don't quote me, but it was like, y'all football players, meaning like those those ride or die football players that football is their life type people, and then those
Right.
players that become analysts and then kind of switch it up on the active players. Like he's almost like y'all are different than me and the people like me, right? So he kind of like it felt to me that he had that energy towards Brandon Marshall in many parts of the podcast. So, um, but yeah, that's one of my things that I came away with. It felt empty, and I want to talk about it. One of the reasons why it was here in a minute, but like that's my piece to that. Like, what did you take away from that part?
No, it's funny you said that because I instantly felt the same way. Emptiness. Like there were I didn't get too much out of the interview. You know what I mean? And like you said, he was sort of scatterbrained in the beginning. And I think that's who the guy is. As the person doing an interview, I think you have to pick up on that, figure out how you can ask him a question to keep him um, interested, and also let him know why he's there instead of
Yeah,
kind of arguing, right? Um, and I think Marshall was just too much into this is me, this is how I would do it. No, just ask him how he would do it.
right.
You're the interviewer. I'm not saying you have to go down to his level because he's all over the place, but you have to kind of bring it back, calm down. Maybe you ask him even a simple question. How was your day today? How is AB doing without football? Does this Sunday look like when you're not at the stadium? You're not busy. You're not prepping.
Right.
What does that look like? Something simple just to get him to talk, open
Yeah,
up more.
icebreaker questions, right?
Yeah,
Getting, you know what I'm saying? Table talk,
you
right?
gotta do it, man. Because from the beginning, just the way he's got his coat, it's just to me, it's like I'm ready for this fight.
Yeah, he's
And it
guarded. Yeah,
shouldn't be that too guarded. It shouldn't be that.
right.
It should be, hey man, let's have this wonderful conversation. We want to know where you're at. We want you to tell your side because your side is more important than anything right now because
Yeah,
it can cost you the next job. Um, the way people are talking about you is probably something you don't like, even if you don't care what people have to say. But teams are listening. This is a good way to clarify certain things. This is a way to tell people how you feel, how you see things, instead of, like you said, the scatterbrain. So I was a little bit lost as well. So I had to try to piece it together and go, oh, I like what he said there. And then
right.
internally trying to say, oh, well, what did he mean by that? Because there was no follow up questions. So I'm like, okay. So there was a few points that he said, which I was like, okay, the guy don't seem crazy to me. He's just a diva. I don't know, but emptiness is what I felt too. Because when you text me that, it was the same thing I felt after watching this, and I'm like, I don't know. I think there was a lot of missed opportunity. Um,
So
so how do
speaking
you
of,
feel? Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to ask you, how do you feel overall about this interview with Brandon? As you see the screen, he's very, listen to
Yeah.
me. What do you think of him?
This answer can take us in a lot of places. So my first one is I feel like I think you hit it when you said missed opportunity. It was a missed opportunity where like there were questions that they could have answered. I don't think they answered them right. Like the
Yeah,
first one, they asked a few questions. Like I said in our conversation was, you know, sometimes it takes one, two, maybe three questions to get down to the root of what you want to know and what the people want to know, right? So
yeah,
they would ask the first question and they'd get stuck in it in a conversation or an argument on it, and it wouldn't get us down the line to the question. I.e., one of the questions that I wanted to know was like, what really went down between you and your BA, the coach, right?
yeah,
Bruce Arians. So, like, they touched on it, but like, spill the tea, right? Like, give me the details. It wasn't really there. They talked about the whole, was it this or was it out? How he felt about it. Like, they could have went into depth a little bit more on that. They touched on it a little bit, but they could have got a little better with that, right? But when they asked him about it, I think this is where they did it. I think it was Jared that may have asked him, the big dude with the Scully. He had
Yeah.
asked him about it, but Antonio Brown didn't respond. He said he was defending more his actions. He was like, I'm going to respond the way I respond from, where I'm from, and you're going to respond a certain way. So basically, his his answer was more of a defense as to why he did the way that he did, as opposed to like, this is, he did mention, not to be all over the place, he did mention that he was like, this was leading up. Coach didn't want me, right? You know what I'm saying? He didn't want me. So that means, all right, I already had that on the back of my mind. Like, I'm here to make money, win a chip with Tom Brady because we're cool. But like, me and the coach, we don't get along. I'm just going to do my thing. But
Yeah.
when the coach got arguably upset and wrong, I think the coach is wrong in the way he handled it, right? I think, coach like, Coach Dungy, if he's calling for a package for Antonio Brown to get in and Antonio Brown doesn't get in or it refuses to go in, me as the coach, or in this case, Tony Dungy, would probably go to him, and knowing the type of coach that he was, right, from what we know of,
So you're
he would
saying it might be a different conversation,
it
different
would be a
outcome.
different conversation, right? He would
Okay.
say, "What's going on? Why can't you?" They said you're not coming in. Hey, coach, my ankle's hurt. Right? Then he would probably be like, "All right, well, we got to come up with another package, or can you come out? Are you sure you can't play? If not, we're going to put somebody else in." Right? That's a different conversation. But according to Antonio Brown and some other sources, is that he was just like instantly was like, "Coach, I can't play." He was like, "Get out of here. You're done." Yeah. And people are interpreting it as like you're fired, and some people are interpreting it as like, "Hey, you're done. You ain't gonna come on the field. You're done playing for the day." Right? But it
Yeah.
seems to me, from Antonio Brown's interview here, that his understanding was the coach was telling him you're done,
You're
right?
fired.
And I don't think, and everyone has you can get your piece in a minute if you believe that was the case. I believe that it wasn't. I think it was the coach is a very emotional, old school coach. He's hitting players in the back of the head when they do things wrong, right? He's not your new coach. He's an
Yeah.
old school coach.
Yeah.
So when you piss him off and you don't do what he says, he's going to tell you to get the hell out. My way or the highway, right? And Antonio Brown, he said it in the thing. He was like, I'm a grown man. You're not going to talk to me all kinds of crazy. You're not going to tell me I'm done. Because you know what? I'm done on my terms. And I think that's what kind of triggered him. And he was just like, I'm not playing for your team. If I'm done, I'm done. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of my
Yeah.
piece that I think that they missed on getting to the details of all that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I will say though, with the whole what he interprets this as, it it's his decision. It's how he sees it. Because this could just be, hey man, like I've done this to somebody like, yo, just stop talking. That don't
Right,
mean like, yo, I don't want you, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you forever, or you're fired, or you're cut. But that's how he interpreted it in that moment, because we don't know what the buildup is.
right,
I know for sure there had to be a buildup. So it wasn't just a thing that happened that Sunday, because like you said, the coach really didn't want him there. You had Tom Brady to vouch for him. That's why he's there, to convince the coach, and he let it go because the coach respects the GOAT.
right,
And ultimately, it worked out because they won a championship, right? So, and this is what, a year and a half. So I'm sure the buildup is there. We don't know the ins and outs of their relationship. Do they even talk? Does the
right.
coach tell somebody? Well, I can. I'm pretty sure the coach probably talks to the wide receiver coach. Then he goes into and talks to him. And
Yeah,
so it's not a direct communication between the two. And they're probably not there to try to repair a relationship. Like, hey, you know what? Let's just talk. We have one common goal. Let's win it. This is
yeah,
football. We love it. I don't think they're putting effort in that either. So I'm not excusing what he did that day. I think I wish he handled it a little bit better. Um, but I think the buildup can cause somebody to react that way. Now, that doesn't mean that because you have an excuse that you should.
Right.
There's times where I walked away from a lot of punch in the face where I know I was in the right.
Right.
But what does that do? It just causes even a bigger commotion. So, but I think the buildup it's something. But you're right. I think they should have dug a little deeper. Like, how is your relationship with you two? Do you guys even talk?
Right.
It's the
Absolutely.
simplest
Did y'all talk
conversation.
regularly? Right. Like
Yeah,
these are the little things that they missed. And and and, and
yeah,
another piece was like, was he wrong in acting that way? Right. We've had conversations and it was like,
yeah,
we everyone knows like when you're in a game or in life, the person who does the wrong first doesn't get caught. It's the one that does the wrong second, right? So BA, right, Bruce Arians, the coach, was wrong, I believe, in the way that he handled the situation, right? Granted, I don't. He had a lot going on too. He had the game on the line. There, I think they were losing to the Jets, right? And then he's like, he calls a package. The player doesn't want to play. Now he has to go deal with this player that he may deem as a headache. I don't know. So he goes
yeah.
there with this energy, like, why aren't you coming in the game? And he's like, Coach, I can't do it. I don't know what he said. You know what I mean? He could have said a lot of things that triggered Bruce
But
Arians to
but
act in the
Gio,
way that he did. Yo,
but why not just talk to him during a timeout, a commercial break? Like, say, hey, just give me a second. Plus,
because
here's the thing: he's not the offensive coordinator, so he's not like focused on calling the plays
I
either.
agree with you. I
He's
agree
there
with
to
you. He is
oversee
wrong,
everything.
right? He is wrong on the way that he approached AB,
Yeah,
and AB should have felt that way. Like
yeah,
he was right to feel the way that he did. Where I think AB was wrong is the way that he handled it, right?
yeah,
And he said to him, he said, "Your average dude guy at work, they do this all the time. They walk out of their job all the time." But he goes, "Because I'm on TV in front of a lot of people, you're gonna look at it differently." In my mind, kind of yes, but also the regular dude that has his regular job that just quits up and quits,
yeah,
like that still has its negative implications too. When you up and quit, as they do in the movies, f you, you're cool, right? But when you go apply for another job and you don't have fu money because you got to apply for a new job, right? Because you're a regular Joe, and they're like, "Where did you work last?" "Oh, I worked at this place." "Can you give us the number and the reference and the name of the supervisor?" Guess what? That's going to come back and bite you in the butt, right?
right.
AB has FU money, right? So now he was able to do what he did, take off his jersey, peace out, I'm out, I'm out. Everybody, you don't have to reference that. Everybody's going to know that. So in this case, other NFL teams are going to look at that and be like, yeah, he's a once in a lifetime talent, but he's got one, two, three, four different teams, arguably, right? How it ended, but it definitely wasn't positive on none of those. He got cut or fired on something in each one of those occasions. So he's 0 for 4 or 4 for 4 getting fired, right?
Yeah,
So that's where I look at it and I'm like, I get it. It's an emotional thing. There was buildup, but you still have to think. And I understand in the heat of the moment, you may not be able to do that. And Antonio Brown is not capable of really doing that because he does what he wants. He has FU money, right? So this is one of the times during the interview where Brandon Marshall, switched seats with Jared, and he's trying to get in there, and he was talking. They were talking about like, this is what I would have done, right? I would have took him to the side and took him to talk to him in the back and be like, Coach, like, don't talk to me, whatever, and try to speak to him that way. He was like pre, you know, mental therapy. Brandon Marshall would have wilded out.
yeah,
Post
yeah. But
Brandon
it's
Marshall
easy to
would have
say
got
though in hindsight.
right. Right. It's
Pretty
easy
easy.
to say that
Yeah,
in hindsight, but I think that's one of those things that I think Antonio Brown took it a little off. That started them to or him just like kind of being guarded towards Antonio. That's my impression, right?
yeah,
Because like you can't bring someone to your talk show and want to talk openly and be like, this is where you've messed up and this is how I would have handled it. Just get his perspective. Ask
yeah,
questions to like understand where his mindset was at, right? And what's the steps moving forward, stuff like that. I think he messed it all up. And I think that's where Brandon Marshall kind of made some mistakes with that. He didn't take advantage of helping AB get his point across, get his word out, because it's better than a press conference. Because AB don't like to talk to the press like that because he knows that they're going to twist his words, right? And this is one of the best opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
And
And
but
I'll say, because you said something about body language when we spoke. Even
yeah,
watching this right now, I just realized, look how he's talking to P because he's so comfortable with him.
absolutely.
But look how Marshall comes at him. Just, man, ask a question. Marshall's doing this. Like, yo, you got to
Yeah.
look, look at his face, right?
Yeah.
So when you see AB answer, he doesn't answer to Marshall. He answers to him, to P.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look,
Look,
look, Marshall answered the question. He looks at P because it's like, all right, this guy's not hostile right now. It's almost like there's something there between them two. I don't know if Marshall wanted to kind of look a certain way towards him, like I don't know, a big brother, or maybe we play the same game, the same position, so I understand. But he's coming at him like,
right.
like I think look. You can see it, but
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think I wish that oh, there
Oh,
goes the seat
switching
changing.
seats.
So now he wants to
Advancing
get
seats.
closer and yell at the guy, make him feel comfortable, man. Like
So here's the thing.
I know they're friends, but like this is
This
probably why he didn't want to open up too much.
this is something that I noticed too, right? So
Eh,
you know that I Am Athlete has gone through some changes. They used to have Fred Taylor
yep,
and Chan was on there and Ocho, right? Ocho still comes on the I Am Athlete. So
yep.
they've pivoted since out of there. So do you think this interview would have been different if they had the original four sitting there with Antonio Brown and House Up?
I think 100%, and just because of like how Channing is, I can see him just kind of like calming him down, maybe with a joke, maybe with something weird where AB's like, that's a wild boy right there.
Yeah,
And they could connect that way. Fred Taylor can give him some wisdom where he's like, yo, I feel you where you're coming from with that, because that's an OG right there, right? So he could give him some wisdom. I think Channing can make it a little bit funny where you're comfortable. Cause like, if you ask me, man, like if you want to pull a chick, crack a joke, you in,
yeah,
right? Like that, it's the scene becomes comfortable. You open up more. This man went from, let me put it up, he went from one chair to another. Now look at him. He's literally holding his hands on top of him, asking him questions, bro, and being very loud. Like, listen to me.
yeah. It must be the wine. I'm just, I don't know.
Bro, it may be, but I definitely think Channing and OG Freaky Fred,
Yeah,
I think it would have been different. I think even if you throw Ocho Cinco in there, being a wide receiver, gone through what he's gone through.
they're both
Um,
from Florida. They're,
yep,
in the podcast that Ocho was with the Pivot guys with OG and Chan.
yep,
They talked about how Ocho and Chad they're tight. They've been tight. They're boys. Like outside of football, they're boys.
yeah.
It was a missed opportunity to have at least Ocho Cinco on here.
Yeah, man. And I think
It'll
they both
upset.
have a snapshot of how they're perceived in the
Yeah,
NFL. Even though I don't
right.
think Chad was like that bad, it was more on the celebration stuff. I don't think
Yeah,
he was
yeah, yeah.
breaking the law or anything.
Right.
But I think I think there's a common ground between those two. It would have been so perfect. And I will say the big dude here, man, I can't remember his name.
Jared. Yeah,
Uh Jared.
yeah,
I, like I told you, I think he should have asked more question. Um, I think every time he has two good questions, and AB was comfortable with answering his questions, and I actually
yeah.
agree with him when he talked about himself
Right.
leaving the NFL. So
So
I think right there was a common ground where he could have asked more questions, but Brandon was just too,
yeah,
you
look
know,
look at look at the body language, right? Look at Jared. Look
yeah,
at Jared.
he's checked
So
out.
I think he did. He's checked out because one, he just got seat punked or whatever you want to call it, right? So if he had stayed there, the energy would have been right, right? In the way that if Brandon Marshall had stayed in his seat and left Jared got essentially elbowed out, and then he just like sat back, and then you could tell from this point on. I don't know what's the minute mark on this video, but he essentially checked out until probably another 20 or 30 minutes later
Yeah,
when when Brandon Marshall like specifically asked him, it was like, hey, you got a question or something like that. Then he brought him back in, but like he sat That's
So what do you think would happen though if Chan and Fred was there?
so I think you're right. Like Chan brings that energy, right? He brings the looseness. If it's locker room talk, he's the locker room guy.
Yeah,
Right.
bro.
I think that's
Yeah,
why I think he's secretly probably to me the superstar of all of them. Like I like him
I
and
agree.
Ocho, right? But like he and I knew less from him than obviously he's the least of all of them as far as superstardom in the NFL. And he's a
Yeah,
linebacker. He played for the Dolphins and they sucked, right? So he didn't hit like that status. So I didn't
yeah.
really know who he was. I was like, who's this chicklet teeth? And he mentioned it, so I could say it.
You know what's funny? I said the same thing. I was like, "Yo, I don't even know who he is," but then I was like, "Oh man, is this guy gonna even last?" Because nobody
Right.
knows
But
him,
he
but
but
he's
but
a
his
star.
personality and his charisma and his
Yeah,
honesty and his jovialness, right? Like he's really cool. So I think he would vibe with AB well. And he
yeah,
would have asked those questions, like those feeling impact questions. He would have hit him with those questions like, I feel you. I would have did the same thing, but nah, I would have went, or whatever. Right. He would have mellowed it out. And then I think OG Taylor would have been he would have when he talks, everybody shuts up. Right? OG talks, you shut up. So he would have asked that perfect question. I think he would have hit the question that we're all trying to figure out, like what's really going on with you, right? And then everybody would have shut up and let AB answer. And then he would have hit him with another question, and then he would have hit him with one of them OG responses that you'd be like, you know what I mean? That's
yeah,
what they're missing right now without them boys on the podcast, right?
yeah. I think his calmness, Fred's calmness, is it's something else because Fred Taylor likes to tell you something that he's experienced,
Right.
right? Brandon Marshall does the same thing, but but the way Brandon does it, it's just yo, yeah. And Fred is like, yeah, when I was in Florida, this happened. OG took me to the side.
Yeah.
It's calming
Energy
and it's
good.
good to listen to. The energy's good. Um, and I think, yeah, I will say this. I figured because Chan and Fred left and they're doing their own thing, I figured this guy might end up on this show for some reason, but I don't think it's going to happen just because there's more stuff that just came out. I don't know if you want to get into it, but we can get into it.